Hello, everyone. Welcome to your live player ratings for Arsenal 2, Bayern 2. Oh my gosh, that was insane. Listen, I need to calm myself down just because there's so many things that I'm like just genuinely shocked by. Some from an Arsenal perspective, some from the referee's perspective, right? And I want to start off by saying that I'm really glad that Arteta made the changes that he did because I think those changes are the only reason why we're still in this tie. I think that, in hindsight, it's always easy to say that we made the wrong decisions, but in terms of a lineup, but genuinely, I think that we looked a little we didn't look like we should have looked. Like, we didn't look like breaking them down or scoring any goals until Trossard and Jesus and Zinchenko came on. So I think those changes were good changes, and I'm glad that Mikel made those. So his adjustment was good. I know that it's going to be very hard, I think, for people to go back and say, well, he chose the wrong team, because a lot of people were happy with the lineup. I was happy with the lineup as well. But once the game started, it was pretty clear that we needed other things. And it was a much probably closer game than people anticipated it being. Um, I did say that I felt like their quality would show a lot more in the Champions League. Just because they're not playing well in the league doesn't mean that they're not a good team. And I think the quality that they do have showed in moments, and we failed to really be able to stop it. There were just large patches of the match where they were winning every single second ball, first ball, and they were dropping the likes of Alphonso Davies and um, Musiala and Sane into midfield, and they were just running past our midfield and into our half. And I think that rattled us. I think that's how the first goal or the second goal happened. That ends up being the penalty with Sane just absolutely burning Kivior on that side. And it just was a tough day out for, I think, a team that learned some harsh lessons today. We had about a 10-minute period where we absolutely lost our heads. And that's all it took for them to walk away with something in that game. That 10-minute period between Gabriel, Raya, and Kivior's, mistake to, you know, uh, Kane's penalty was all of a 10-minute, 12-minute period. And we just completely lost our heads when we conceded that first goal. And it's a tough one to take because we had 60,000 Arsenal fans in the stadium. We had everything going in our favor for the most part, and I'm glad that we clawed our way back and we didn't concede anything in the second half. But I do think that we've made our job so much more difficult than we probably needed to do. That being said, I do think that was a penalty at the end there, and I think the referee is a fucking pussy for not calling it. I think he didn't want to make a big decision that was at the end of the game that would take VAR into consideration, and so he just did not call it. He also didn't call the clear foul on Odegaard maybe a minute earlier, where it's just like at the end he just decided to stop making calls, and I don't understand why. And I'm really sick of referees not feeling like they can make big decisions, early on in the game, but when it's the dying embers of a match, they just seem to be like, no, I don't want to. And to me, that's just a clear penalty. I know why Saka was upset. I know some people are like he was initiating contact, but he was the one dribbling with the ball. He made the move. And as he's trying to go towards the ball, Neuer makes contact with Saka and is nowhere near the ball. He doesn't make any contact with the ball or anything. He just takes Saka's leg out. And so for me, that's a clear penalty. I don't know why it was not called. And yes, we caught life as well because they hit the post, but I feel like, if you can make a clear penalty decision earlier on in the game, why can't you do it at the end? And so, yeah, it was just all of it was just like really like clouded my whole vision. And I want to be very clear when we do these player ratings because it's that just rattled me so badly. I was shaking in the watch along. I just couldn't believe that they called that. But I know that, a lot of people are probably getting like the reality check of a lifetime, but the Premier League is not like the Champions League. In the Champions League, it's creating moments, and handling, having to play against awkward opponents and, everybody feeling like they can have a go at you no matter where they're at in their league situation. They always feel like they can have a go at you. And I think in um these two rounds in the Porto and Bayern first leg, we're seeing that there's a little awkwardness between Arsenal playing their Premier League game and being able to take themselves out of that mold and create moments in the Champions League, which is all it's about. Bayern created two moments. That's all it took. And that's all it's about. So this team is getting a harsh lesson. I feel like the club, the fans are getting a harsh lesson. Did I expect us to have a capitulation? 10 minutes? No, I didn't. But I did expect Bayern to show their quality, and I think they do have some players that had good games. I do. I think they had some players that had some good games. I thought they had some players that had some joy, and I think some of our players really struggled. Martinelli, one of them. I don't think Kai really had the best game. I think Kivior struggled. I thought our center backs looked a little shaken. And I thought we had probably a handful of players that looked like they weren't, you know, like in a fog of the moment. Odegaard being one of them, Gabriel Jesus being another, when he came on. And so Rice was good once we pushed him back. Last two games, I think Jorginho Rice has been a little nullified. So maybe we need to rejig that. But it's a tough one to take. I do think that I expected us to go to Germany with a lead, a marginal one at that. I didn't expect us to go 5-3, 4-5 nil up, but it's a tough one to take. Loads to talk about. We got to get into the ratings, but you guys know I like to spend the first 25 minutes or so just kind of getting the initial thoughts out there before we go into individual performances, right? But yeah, I think we need to Arteta maybe needs to think a little bit differently about what works in the Champions League and what works in the Premier League. And right now, it kind of feels as though, and this may just be based on a very small amount, a very small data size, but I mean, he is one of the best Champions League, players that we have. And maybe Jesus is somebody that needs to start. Maybe Zinchenko is somebody that needs to be considered a little bit more because without them, we really do struggle in the Champions League to create anything and to really you know, get in between the lines. And so I didn't actually think our performance really started until they came on. And it's just unfortunate because we had already went 2-1 down. But I think Jesus showed his quality. I think Zinchenko and Patches showed his quality too. Trossard with a goal. And so going to Germany, we have to take those things into consideration for sure. Let's see what you guys are saying. Lasker says Saka bottled the win. Easy Ann says Saka was good today, no agenda. Omar says, let's say this clear. We weren't at the level. All of our players were nervous and looks like we struggle in this competition, even when the opposition gave us the ball. Saturdays equals youth says getting a result in Bayern is very unlikely. Jackie says agree with that. Tawana says Saka was wasteful, and Martinelli wasn't in the game due to the left side being non-existent. Consigliere says Prem Farmers League. Jacob says at least no Alfonso at the Allianz. So we were able to, keep our players from getting that next yellow, and they got one for sure. Keto says Jesus was really good though. He was very good when he came on. Shamaria says defo a reality check. Johnny says White shot was weak. Nobody was good bar Odegaard and Jesus. Jacob says at least no. Oh yeah, I read that one already. Nico says Tuchel taking off Sane did us a favor, to be honest. I thought that he was, maybe Sane was, maybe he thought he was tired or something, but he did start to give away the ball quite frequently, and his final ball was not great. And so I wonder if Tuchel just thought, well, I'll bring on Coman maybe for fresh legs, or maybe because he's maybe a better 1v1 dribbler. I don't know what he was thinking, but I did think it helped us. But I also think that Zinchenko did well against Sane and Coman. I really don't think either one of them had that much that they did against Zinchenko, where I did think Kivior really struggled. So I'm not saying that Kivior is not as good of a defender as Zinchenko. I just feel like Zinchenko did a better job at keeping them at bay, because there was just that, yeah, Kivior got burned. That's just what it is. Martin says, as a Canadian Gooner, I have mixed feelings watching Davies play against us. He's such a baller. Um, Jacob says Kivior struggled. He did. Boy says it was a pen. It actually scandalous that it wasn't awarded. And I think that the interesting thing is that I know that people will be like, we weren't robbed. We didn't play well. And I'm just like, yeah, but even if you don't play well, you deserve for the calls that are the calls to go the way that they're supposed to, right? And so, yeah, I feel like I'm not quite sure where the Saka bottled it conversation is coming from either. He literally scored the goal, and he should have had a penalty. So I'm not really sure where that's coming from. I feel like people are being first of all, I think a lot of these people are rivals and it's still 2-2 and it's just it's not like it's over yet. It's weird. Like, I don't know. It was a penalty. Tawana says how we didn't make Saka take on Davies to get another yellow was stupid. O'Malley says Saka was our best player. I thought Saka was good today. Johnny says, when I heard people being insanely upset when Zinni came on, I went berserk. I wanted to shoot them. Zinni is clearly above anyone else when we need a goal. Get a fucking clue. And, you know, I feel like I feel like Zinchenko is just somebody that people genuinely cannot get over past things. They cannot get over his politics or him talking or whatever. But I genuinely don't enjoy watching us build sometimes without him because our other fullbacks just don't have the abilities that he has. And I think this was maybe a reality check for people that are saying that Zinchenko has no value for this team anymore. Get a fucking clue. Like he does. Like he has value in this team. Like we are nowhere near a point where we can just say, you know what? Zinchenko has no role here anymore. Maybe in the Premier League, because it's more of a physical game. It's a little bit different. We can get away with the Kiviors and all this kind of stuff. But in the Champions League, we need more technical ability, and that's why I feel like what we've struggled with against Porto and what we struggled with today is that obviously we struggled with their counter threat, which is something that needs to be looked at. I don't think any combination of midfielders that we would have put out there, by the way, would have been able to deal with that because we don't necessarily have the legs. It's only really Declan Rice. But, beyond that, like we really struggled to like have any technical quality in tight areas to be able to draw them in and pass between the lines. There were things that we genuinely were missing in that game. And so I thought Zinchenko and Jesus and Trossard added a little bit of that, but ultimately it was just a little bit too late because we had a 10-minute period where we just kind of we capitulated. I just cannot see it in any other way than that. We score the early goal, everything is going our way, and then somehow a very innocuous ball from Musiala into open space where there's no Bayern players. Raya comes out, Gabriel gets the ball and kind of trips a little bit when he tries to pass it to Kivior. So I'm not quite sure if it's just a bad pass from Gabriel or if Kivior should be more ready for it, but the whole thing was a clusterfuck. And then you exacerbate it by then having another moment, not very soon after, but maybe about 10 minutes after, where you just completely just like the defending for the penalty was atrocious. Too many people leaving their feet, but that's also because we got beat 1v1 in a wide area and they were in wide open space. So is something that needs to be looked at. They have so many counterattacking threats in their team, and so many good ball carriers that it just really disrupted us a lot. And it definitely needs to be looked at. But listen, we just kind of need to learn from this. I know that a lot of people are will already throw in the towel, but I don't feel like there's any reason to completely throw in the towel. It's disappointing, but basically we just have to go to the Allianz Arena and win, and so we just have to get it done. Like, I don't really know what else to say, yeah. Martin N says, without Zinni, we had 3-0, or without Zinni, we had zero threat down the left. With Zinni, we finally had more chances down the left. And I think genuinely, like Zinchenko added a lot to us. He's always going to carry a level of threat for us going the other direction, but I actually felt like we were moving the ball a lot better with him out there. He took some risks. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but genuinely we could not progress the ball in a good way without him, So I think he definitely I think people definitely got the reality check. about some of our players are not quite on the outskirts the way that you think they are. They're not as useless as you think you are or you think they are. We don't have enough technical, like in the Premier League, we're so dominant against so many teams that our technical quality doesn't always have to be the best. We genuinely can just kind of run you over and boom, we score. We're fine, right? Against teams in the Champions League, it is a little bit more technical. That's something that has been abundantly clear to me in these first, like the Porto leg and or the Porto tie and this one leg, is that we need to put our technical players out there. We may have some risk going the other direction, but my goodness, we're not we're not penetrating shit without guys in there that can hold on to the ball and find the pass, and it was tough. There's a lot of different things going on there. I don't know how I feel. I still need to lay down and think about it. There's 350 of you guys in here. I'm disappointed. I'm upset about the penalty, but I'm also disappointed in that 10 minutes of capitulation because I don't think they really had that much. Like we defended our box well, except for that one where they hit it off the post, but we defended our box pretty well most of the times. But the two goals that they did get, I just feel like we just kind of lost our heads, and that's really disappointing, right? John P says, "Come on, people! Bayern in Champions League, we played well, but we made a couple of defensive mistakes, and they were just playing on counterattacks." But I think like this is how you get set up. I feel like you get set up when you start to think, oh my gosh, like they're not good in their league or they're trailing behind Leverkusen in a league. That means that we automatically are going to win. And then you also get sucked into rivals saying, well, you should win 3-0. And it's just not that simple. It's not that easy. Like we still are learning how to be in this competition. And so the manager's learning, the players are learning, whatever. So I'm a little bit, again, like I told you guys before the game, I'm a little bit less feeling as like about this as I do with the Premier League because I know we're still kind of like with training wheels. That being said, like we cannot have that capitulation. We just genuinely cannot. Like no, but Bayern have good players, and anybody who thought that they didn't is smoking crack. Like they're smoking crack. Like I don't know where they don't watch football. They don't watch other leagues. Bayern have good players that could actually play in our team, and vice versa. So yeah, it's always going to be a very even tie. I felt. I just was hoping that we wouldn't give them anything, right? Jumpy Salmon says Trossard and Jesus were good substitutions. I think we could have left in there. Kafunsa says Trossard is cold. I mean Trossard is in a good bit of form too right now when you think about it. So I think Arteta also needs to look at who's in form, and this is also like a lot of this is in fucking hindsight because I was not upset about the lineup, but when it came out, I thought, okay, this is probably our best team, but genuinely in the Champions League, our best team might actually be a little bit different. And that's not something that I'm going to pretend like I was saying prior to the game. Now, what I did say is that I do feel like Jesus and Zinchenko have a role to play, and they showed that today, right? Karon says Kivior showed his inexperience. Han Shulu says, I think Gabby could have passed it earlier. I feel like just depends on what your narrative is. If you don't like Kivior, you'll say it's his fault. If you don't like Raya, then you'll say it's his fault. I think it's a combination of the three. I think Raya comes out, creates a little bit of confusion, but Gabriel quite literally trips over his own feet trying to pass that ball to Kivior, and it's not the best pass, and then Kivior's also not ready. And something that I'm starting to know about, like think about, like or not think, notice about Kivior is that there are times where you pass the ball and he's not quite as quick as he should be. He's a little bit like ponderous or like weights. And that's exactly what happened, is that split indecision from Kivior because either he needed to be more ready for it or Gabriel needed to make a better pass. But Gabriel does kind of trip over his own feet. So you can try to find a villain for that. I think it's a combination of everybody. And so it just kind of is what it is. But it was very much so like self-inflicted. I'll say that for sure. Dylan says, this Arsenal team is young and inexperienced in this competition. It's a different thing. It took City years and years to learn this. Anyone who assumed Arsenal would walk is naive. I kind of agree with that, to be honest. Like, Anybody who is saying like the 5 nils that I was seeing, 3 nils, whatever, this is easy. They're gonna get slapped. It's almost like they didn't learn from Porto, and then they also don't watch other teams, and then they also don't know their own team. Like, we need to walk before we run. Bayern is a very tough it's a tough tie. But that being said, we're not out of it, and I'm feeling like people are acting like we are. Um, and that's a little bit disappointing. It's a little bit disappointing. Like, it's like if we don't run over teams, people just completely throw in the towel, and it's just like weird. Um, but yeah, it was another performance where I do feel like we could have done so much better. In the final third, we had moments where we could have done a little bit better. You had the moment with Ben White where I was thinking, "Oh, you have to put that away." Even if I thought it was offside, I thought maybe it was marginally offside. I'm like, you kind of have to put that away because I genuinely don't think Bayern would have been in that situation that Ben White was in and not punished us, right? And so not putting that away was disappointing, not creating more opportunities. There's just a couple of different things. They were an awkward opponent, but we have to we have to move on. We have to move on. Like, it's not over. I am not getting sunk into it's over talk. I'm genuinely not. Like, but I am disappointed from a couple of different things. Shamaria says the general consensus will be that we will lose in Munich. I pray that the boys will go in with a point to prove and go through the next round. Um, so yeah, Travis says, why didn't Tommy play? I don't know, but like once we found out that Kivior, I don't know. I feel like Kivior came back in. He was a part of the team that had been playing really well. He was actually one of the only people that played well against Porto at home. And so when you look at that performance, I don't think it was that like Kivior shouldn't have played. I think his inexperience did show, and he was a little bit rattled. But then I don't think there was an opportunity to bring Tommy in either. I think Zinchenko was the right move. I do, because we needed to create an advantage. We didn't need to try to save ourselves from getting scored against again. We needed to try to score a goal, right? And so that screams more Zinni than Tommy to me from the beginning, though. Like, I don't really feel like I had that much of a problem with Kivior starting because again, he played well against Porto. So I don't know why Tommy didn't play. I genuinely don't. Thank you, Anthony, so much for your super chat. Anthony says, we conceded our own mistakes, which can be learned and fixed. Arteta had the balls to make changes and they were the right decisions. And um, yeah, no, like, he made good decisions. I think a lot of people will, in hindsight, say that he chose the wrong team and, how could he have? But I think a lot of people were happy with the lineup, or at least comfortable enough with the lineup because Zinni was not in it. I think that was like the main thing is people just did not want Zinni in it. And so when it actually unfolded, I just feel like their counterattacking threats, their the guys that they had that they could carry the ball were so dangerous, and they were just behind our midfield a lot, or they were behind Declan and in front of Jorginho a lot. So it gave them like all this space to work with, and it was just very stressful all the time. And so I don't actually know, like, I'm not a tactical mind like that, so I don't actually know what we needed to do to change it. But I think for the most part in the second half, we stopped a lot of that from happening by having better moments on the ball, but the damage was kind of already done. So, but the changes that he made actually worked out for us. So, yeah. Nasai says, that elbow from Kane on Gabriel was cheeky. He knew what he was doing. Could have been a red. It's never going to be a red for him. He's never going to get a red for something like that. I think the yellow, I'm like, oh, at least he got a yellow. And I do think that, like, not necessarily Gabriel, but I think Saliba got a little bit like rattled with the Kane stuff and like he was fouling and stuff like that. They really have to. Kane is an old dog and he doesn't have any new tricks. So this is what he does. He rattles you, he fouls you, he plays dirty and stuff. And I think sometimes we did good, sometimes we didn't with him. So yeah, we'll see what happens in Munich. We'll see what happens in Munich for sure. Boy says that play Bayern did to get the penalty was a set play, by the way. Neuer first goofed around on the ball to dim our concentration. Kivior got done by Sane, naive from him, but it happens. Johnny says, "This is not a Tau loss. Let's be fair. It's 2-2 against Bayern. It's not the end of the world. What bothers is that we didn't deserve more. We were skittish as hell." I don't think that. I think it was a fair I think it's a mostly a fair result based on the way that the game played out. Do I think it was a penalty? Absolutely. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I don't think that was a penalty. I think any team, anybody that's pretending like if that was Cole Palmer, if that was fucking Anthony, if that was fucking any but Foden, everybody would think that that was a penalty. It's just because he was in a red shirt and his name is Bukayo Saka that people are pretending that it's not even it's like clear and obvious that it wasn't. It was to me, it was a penalty. Makes contact, doesn't make any contact with the ball. Um, you know, but I get what you're saying that I think you're absolutely spot on about it wasn't that like we just completely outplayed them and bad things happened to us. Their two goals were legitimate. Our two goals were good, but the play, there was enough there for both teams to, I think, feel like that was probably a fair result. And, that's I think what's probably the most like maybe surprising for people is that no, Bayern did not come to the Emirates and just get whooped like some people thought that they would, you know. Yeah, there's a lot to learn for this team, and I know some people like I don't know if the expectation is for us to win the Champions League. I feel like there's false expectation from people that don't have any sort of reality. You know, they're not in based in reality, but I genuinely do feel like, this is going to be a learning curve year for us in the Champions League because we've never done it before. It's fun to think about what could happen beyond this, but Bayern are a difficult opposition and we kind of haven't done this before. So I kind of expected this. It's hard to watch in real time. Like I could not have prepared myself for how I felt at the end of that game, but the team is definitely still learning for sure. You cannot have just 2 or 3 maximum good performances. Like, you genuinely need to have 6, 7 guys, like how we are in the Premier League, 6, 7 guys, at least at 7s, 8s, 9s. Like, there's just too many low and absent performances there. Some of that's probably because we weren't set up 100% the way that we could have been set up. Like, in hindsight, you probably think like Jesus should have been in there, blah, blah, blah. But I think from the beginning, there's just too much jittery. And hopefully going to Munich, they'll settle down a little bit because listen, we had a chance. We had 60,000 Arsenal fans in there. They didn't have any fans and they still left with something. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be super tough, but it's not over yet. So we need to like buck up. Like, we need to buck up. Terry says we were not at our best tonight, giving away 2 silly goals. Let's hope we put it right next week. Chosen One says Arsenal went to the Etihad and nullified them. Not saying it's the same, but Arsenal are going big away grounds isn't an automatic loss anymore. Boy says yes, Magalhaes could have saved it, but he shouldn't have to. The only reason he has to is because Raya has lost his composure and broken ranks. I kind of understand that. I think like maybe the initial thing was Raya came out. Um, but I don't think you can relieve Gabriel and Kivior from all of that because genuinely, if they just even just chuck it down the pitch, like if Gabriel just hits it as hard as he can, they don't score. So you can make an initial mistake, but that doesn't mean that the goal has to happen. And that doesn't mean that there weren't other errors in between there that were totally unavoidable. You don't have to make a poor pass and not be ready for that pass after that. So I kind of get what people are saying. They're trying to pin it on Raya. Maybe you can say he made the initial mistake, but let's be serious. Like after that, like Raya didn't get the ball and throw it out there poorly or anything like that. He came out. Gabriel was pretty much he was under some pressure, but he could have passed it out. He could have kicked it long. He could have passed a good pass to Kivior. Kivior could have been ready for it. There's just too much in there for me to just be like, well, Raya, it's like there's just too much. Like, there's too much in there where it was smelly. Wake Up Mind says Bayern's passing was accurate. Ours is not. Tony says agrees and he was the right move. Jack says, Jess, firstly, you are so much calmer. Normally you overreact, but this is a fair criticism. Secondly, would you start Jesus for the away leg ahead of Martinelli? It seems we're unbalanced up front. I think I don't know. Right now I'm like, yeah, but I don't know. I don't. I think Gabriel Jesus should start, but I'm not 100% sure I wanna say that it's for Martinelli. I'm just wondering, you know, what if we have the left side of our midfield and back line correct, does Martinelli get more joy? Is Martinelli a bigger threat for us, like, or a bigger, big move for us versus putting Jesus on the left and playing Kai through the middle? You know, those are conversations that I think Arteta needs to have with his coaching staff. But like right now, if I like that, I don't want to say it. I don't have a strong opinion on it. It's too soon right after the game, but I'm thinking Martinelli and Jesus based on the fact that Martinelli didn't even have a chance to get into the game because like there was the left-hand side was so weird, so it's tough. It's a tough one, I think. Brian says, I think the pen is debatable, but I think could have went around him and still scored. I don't know what to think about it. That's a really interesting point. I need to look at that again. So is that why people are saying he bottled it, is because instead of going around the keeper and scoring, he fell on the ground or tried to bait the penalty? I have to look at that again. In real time, it looks like a penalty to me. But we'll see. That's an interesting point. Yeah, it felt like a penalty to me, but I definitely hear what you're saying. Levon, thank you so much for your super chat. Says our midfield getting ran over. Kept Ben White quiet from the build up. Saka great. Odegaard just okay in this game. I'll be honest. I actually think it's swapped. I actually think Odegaard was better. Was really good, and Saka was good too. But I thought Odegaard was actually the only midfielder that was getting on the ball and actually progressing us up the pitch. I felt like we really lacked build up early on in that match, and we need to consider maybe a different pivot going into the next game. Because what happens is Odegaard has to drop so deep and do so much defensive work that he's not in the pockets the way that he should. And so personally, I think Odegaard actually was really good and was actually one of the only ones in midfield that was reliable on the ball. But he has to do so much additional work. People expect him to defend, press, drop deep, receive the ball off of the back line, get us up the pitch, get in the pocket, create the chance, and then score the chance. When in reality, if we had a double pivot that could receive the ball under pressure, build up on their own and actually pass the ball to Odegaard, because Odegaard can't get the ball and then pass to himself, can he? So I think there's an argument to be made that when Arsenal go to Munich, that they should start out with a more technical double pivot so that we can a more technical double pivot so that we can get Odegaard in the pocket so that who's ever in that double pivot should be passing it to Odegaard. Because right now we're finding it very difficult because Odegaard can't pass to himself. And you really can't pass him between the lines to Kai Havertz. Like, he's not dropping deep into those positions. So I get what you're saying. Maybe maybe I'll rewatch it and I'll feel differently. But I genuinely felt like Odegaard had a good game, but we asked him to do too many things because our midfield double pivot was not doing the midfielding. They weren't doing the midfielding. Like, Declan was very high up and Jorginho was like non-existent. So it was just kind of a lot of like Gabriel and Saliba passing the ball back and forth to each other, then passing it to White, then White trying to get, like, it's just a lot, And so maybe there's a consideration for, going with Odegaard, Partey, and Declan Rice in the next round. So Partey and Zinchenko can actually find Odegaard in the pockets, and Odegaard doesn't have to drop deep into the pivot to get us up the pitch. So I'm finding it a little bit like we're asking people to do so many fucking jobs. So many fucking jobs. And I'm just like, we need to get the double pivot right first. And maybe Jorginho and Rice wasn't right for this game because I genuinely cannot remember a single thing Jorginho did. I cannot. And I'm not saying that's because he was bad or like he got on the ball and fucked up, but like did he touch the ball? So that's a problem. So yeah, I'm just thinking out loud. Tawana says the commentators were against everything we did. They were against it. Talib says we fucked up. Jacob says it's a clear pen. You're seeing a slow-mo. He was running at full pace. Keenan says, I think we should start with the same 11. It's not perfect, but it's our best 11. Sam says hindsight is 2020. The lineup looked good. I agree with that. The only problem was I felt Declan should have played a more defensive role and maybe he was too far up And that's why they were bypassing midfield, because when he dropped deeper, we weren't getting sliced open as much. And so yeah, that's an adjustment that may need to be made. Like he can't, because like I'm saying, like they were in the pocket in between Rice and Jorginho. So Jorginho's natural inclination is to back up and drop. And once you're past Declan Rice, then you're beyond our best, you know, counterattack stopper, right? So all of this is in hindsight. Like do feel like we picked a lineup that felt very comfortable to us, you know? So Boy says Jorginho was a logical selection. So was Kivior. We didn't lose. We can go there and win. And yeah, I know some people are going to go into doom. I cannot get into doom and gloom. I genuinely cannot, because it's not over. We came up against a team that was probably better, like, than people thought, and we didn't play as good as we probably should have. And so we didn't lose. We're still in it. And yeah, we just have to hope that we play a lot better, in the next one, right? Um, let's see. Shaquille says Jorginho doesn't have the legs. Kavunso says Arteta is gonna adjust the tactics set up for the CL. It's a different mindset, and yeah, I agree. Ibe says the game was beautiful, beautifully chaotic. Chaotic. It's a Champions League match, and the boys stood up and will finish the job in Munich. I like your positive attitude. Jacob says I agree with Sam. So yeah, I'm just like reading things. Keenan says ESR Jorginho Odegaard, a bit of a maverick, but it feels right. I would not start that in Munich. I'd be so like scared if we did. And the thing about like Partey is like the bad part about Partey coming in now is that he's not fit. Like you could just tell like he's rusty. And so he does some good things, he does some not so great things. And so I don't know how like we can get him up to speed, but I think like my natural feeling would be, okay, well, if we need more at the base of our midfield in order to play in between the lines, then you have to have some sort of maybe combination of Zinchenko and Partey, or shore it up with Tommy and Partey or something like that. And then you can push Rice and Odegaard up a little bit more, and Rice can shuttle back and forth. But Partey is just not fit. And that is my biggest fear with him, is just like in Munich against legs, he came in maybe probably 2 weeks too late. We haven't had the opportunity to really get him going. And so that's tough. That's tough. Martin says, I like our chance. Our record away from home is pretty good. Marble says Alfonso won't be playing next leg, advantage for us. The Dude Diary says Partey needs more time. Get rid of that rust because my boy was standing up the joint. I think you mean stinking up the joint. Boy says I don't like Jesus at all, Amon. He's clearly got something in the locker for Bayern. I don't like that. I still think he might be better off the bench, but we're out of options. Zick says Ben White and Kivior were not good today. Saliba and Gabriel also played a mistake-filled match, and it's so unfortunate because they've been our strong point all season, has been the back line. And we scored 2 goals, and so that should have been enough, but it wasn't, and that's really unfortunate. So they have to look themselves in the eyes and say, "Listen, why was I shaking in my boots? Why was I unable to pass the ball? Why was I so rattled?" And I think, yeah, we'll get to it because we're going to go into individual evaluations, but some players are looking a little funny under the Champions League lights, and that's to be expected because they haven't really done it before, but it's hard to watch them struggle in arenas that they can do well in, and that's the toughest part, so yeah. We'll start with Raya. Get in the chat. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Give me your guys' ratings as well. We're going to kind of go a little bit faster and fly through these a little bit more, but the main ones we'll chit chat about. But definitely comes out and makes the initial mistake. I feel like that was like the only real thing that he had to do really was, he didn't really have to make any saves. Yeah, he didn't really have to make any saves. He came out, caused the confusion. Still think they should do better. There's so many other things that could have happened beyond them scoring a goal after that. After he comes out, him coming out and causing confusion does not mean we have to concede a goal. That being said, he started off with that, and then that shakiness, like, kind of like, and I'll be fair because that's something I've said about Ramsdale as well. Like, encouraging nervousness is not great. And I feel like that encouraged a little bit of nervousness. So, yeah, for me, conceded 2 goals, created the nonsense at the beginning, you get a 5. Um, you know, that it just feels like you just get a 5, below average, right? Saliba, I think again, like somebody he had his best game against one of his best games against Brighton and then turned around and had a game like this, concedes the penalty. It's a clear penalty as well. Like there's nothing. Which it wasn't even just the penalty, to be honest. Like a lot of people dived in before that happened. Again, a lot of shit had to happen before that penalty was conceded. Kivior gets burned. Then I see like 3 or 4 players, maybe Rice and Gabriel both leave their feet. Then Ben White leaves his feet. Or no, then Saliba leaves his feet. Then White leaves his feet. Like it's everybody, right? I think what concerned me the most about Saliba's performance is that there wasn't a level of like authority. I felt like he on the ball was doing things that are not what he should be doing. Carrying the ball down the pitch is one of them. Carrying the ball down the pitch and losing it is just like unacceptable. There were just too many times where, he just like there was even one time after we had conceded the goal and I felt like Odegaard had come back for the pass and he like barely got the pass to Odegaard. They almost nicked it. And I'm just like, yo, when we play this way and we're at the halfway line, Saliba and Gabriel have got to be so confident on the ball that they don't encourage the opposition to think that they can get the ball off of them or, make them make a mistake or whatever. And I just feel like Saliba showed again in the Champions League a little bit that he needs maybe some more time, to cook. So, uh, I don't know. It's not even just the penalty for me. It's more than that. It was just he wasn't on it. So, I'm gonna give him a 6. Like it wasn't great. And I also could probably just about give Gabrielle the same. I think the two of them together showed a level of nervousness that I haven't seen them be like that in a while. And that's a little bit concerning. Kivior, gonna give you a little bit lower, buddy. I think he was definitely out of his depth. It felt like he was out of his depth. I'm surprised that he was so much out of his depth. I said before the game that he's played against Poland, like he's played in big games. He was one of the better performers at home against Porto. Today, he got absolutely roasted, and he had to come off. And that's so unfortunate too because he was playing so well. Um, but the game is the game, bro. 5. It wasn't good. Yeah, burnt, toasted, crispy. Very crispy. We'll actually do Zinchenko as well since he played a good chunk of the game. I thought we looked much better with him. And again, this is the lesson to the people that have decided that we don't need Zinchenko. We can have those conversations after this season, but right the fuck now, we absolutely need somebody with his ability on the ball. Like, let's be serious for 5 seconds. Like, we are nowhere near in a position where Zinchenko has no value to this team. And he showed it. Was he perfect? No. He gave away the ball one time, and I almost like threw my phone at the TV because I'm just like, can you stop fucking dribbling and giving away the ball? But he created some sort of jeopardy for Bayern because there was somebody on the ball that could thread it between the lines. There was somebody that had a calm mind around the box, and we started to create more openings. So, yeah, I thought Zinchenko did well, and he also defended Sane and Coman better than Kivior did, And I'm just like, I couldn't have written that. If you would have told me before the game that Zinchenko would have defended Coman and Sane better than Kivior, I would have told you that you were smoking high grade. Seriously. So I think he did a good job. I'm going to give him a 7. I think he's put himself in a position to potentially start in Munich. I know some people will still say maybe Tommy should start, but I think it all depends on how the game goes. I feel like maybe start Tommy, and if we're not scoring goals quick enough, like start Tommy so that they don't score anymore. But if we can't break them down and we can't get that next goal, then maybe Zinchenko comes in. I think Kivior has put himself in a position where he probably should not be in these latter stages of the Champions League. I know it sounds so harsh, but it only takes a moment, doesn't it? So That might sound harsh. I may wake up and say, "No, that's not right, Jess," but, yeah, it wasn't good. White, I also thought had a very, like, kind of off game, just like Saliba and Gabriel. He has to score, like, he genuinely is in the box free and has to score and doesn't, and I just feel like if we go 2-0 up, they're not coming back. Because after we scored the first goal, they had already started to just kind of like, they were just teetering on the edges of, like, "Fuck it, we're shit." They were just on the edges of that because we were on them, and we were creating more chances. We don't score that second goal, and about a couple minutes later, Musiala passes the ball in an innocuous ball into the channel, and we fuck it up. That's how fine the margins are, right? So it's not just about that, right? He's a defender. They're not going to always score their chances, whatever. But I think it's just like the general, like, giving away of the ball, the lackadaisical passing in those triangles. Like, we need you to be sharper than that. Like, there were just times where I felt like he didn't put any emphasis on the ball, you know? And so, yeah, I was a little bit disappointed in his performance, and I was defended like the whole defensive unit. I was actually very disappointed in. I thought they kind of let us down today, if I'm honest. So, 6. Let's see what you guys are saying. I'm starving. Sorry, guys. If I'm going a little bit fast, I'm like starving. And then US women come on in just like an hour. So here, yeah. I can put up a man of the match poll if you guys want to. I was just so rattled that um I couldn't. So yeah. Um, give me just 1 second. Man of the match. Slim pickings, but Saka, uh Odegaard, like literally nobody from the back line. Jesus, uh or Trossard. Start. Okay. So there you go. You guys can vote on that poll now. Let's see. Sane gets it. Tawana says man of the match is Trossard. Um, I mean, we drew, so I don't think there's like no man of the match. Um, but yeah. The whole back line was a bit meh. Conceding silly goals. The midfield was so strange. Jorginho, I cannot remember a thing that he did, and I feel like that's enough for me. Genuinely. I feel like that's enough for me to know that he didn't have the best game. Um, we didn't really get that Jorginho passing that we were getting before. And, sometimes what happens, and I'm not saying 100% that this happened, but I didn't actually love Rice and Jorginho against Brighton. I just think we were so much better than them that we just won the game. But I didn't actually love that either. I don't know what it is, but sometimes, teams figure you out and they figure out ways to stop things that, like, we introduced Partey and Rice, or not Partey and Rice. We introduced Jorginho and Rice maybe like 2 months ago, and now maybe teams are figuring out ways where they can stop it from working, or you know what I mean? And so I've kind of felt like maybe the last couple of games it hasn't been as robust or as like, "Oh yeah, that's really working for us as it has been in the past." And so maybe it's time to shake it up a little bit. It's just like it's hard to find somebody to shake it up with, because probably the main option that you'd want to shake it up with is not fit enough right now. So either you take a risk and put him in and just let him build fitness while we're on a tight rope with flames at the bottom, or you just continue on with the same. But the beauty of Jorginho and of Rice was they were kind of playing in that double pivot together, and they would pick and choose who went forward and who went back. And you would get Jorginho in certain parts of the game in those triangles out wide, picking those good passes into our attackers. And we didn't get any of that today. And that's unfortunate. So, yeah, it's got to be, I mean, it was like ghost, I don't remember anything that you did, right? So I'm going to give him like a 5.5. Like, I genuinely cannot remember a single thing that you did. Not one. So if somebody can enlighten me, that'd be great. With Rice, I felt like he was too high up. And once he went back into the 6, he was much better. But, I feel like that's what we maybe, and this is again all in hindsight, but I feel like what we bought Rice for was to stop teams like this from scoring. against us, and he wasn't even in positions to stop because once they started attacking us, he was far up and Jorginho was back. So I think we need to consider playing just like a traditional double pivot in front of our back line in the next game. Um, or, playing somebody else in the double pivot so that we can get something from it because either we need to have such a good passing double pivot that even if they're getting bypassed, we're cutting them open, or we need to stop them from being able to not be able to get there in the first place. And Declan Rice is the only one that can stop that, right? And so I give him a 6. It's probably a little bit harsh, but didn't really have that big of an impact, was not in the right positions to do what he does best. And, you know, it's all in hindsight. So, you know, this is gonna feel harsh, but I didn't love the way the midfield, like, I was screaming the whole time. I was just like, they're in between, Rice and Jorginho. There's all this fucking space. Where is it coming from?" So I don't think we adjusted well. Um, and Odegaard, I thought he was our best player. Um, to be honest, I thought besides the boys that came on, the Jesus and Zinchenko and Trossard, I felt like him and Saka were probably the only ones that were causing any sort of threat and had any sort of quality on the ball at any point in that game. He didn't have a lot of impact in the final third, but again, like what he was doing was having to drop in deep to get us up the pitch. And I just don't feel like I know some people are like, well, that's when he started playing well. I'm like, I don't know if that's actually like it's getting him more involved, but I feel like the better way for him to be involved is if he's getting the ball in between the lines and if he's in the pockets, because Odegaard can do the dropping deep and doing all that shit. But we know what he does best is when he's in and around the box, right? And so it's a tough one. It really is. I think he was our best player. I'm going to give him a 7, but um, we need more than just Odegaard trying to drop in deep, get us up the pitch, be in between the lines, be in the pockets, press, defend, score, assist. Like we need him. We need more, So yeah. And Jesus actually helped us with that because he actually has creativity. And so maybe in games like this, we need to add Jesus in so that we can add another creative outlet. Because asking Odegaard to do it all, I feel like is a lot for one player. So I'm gonna give him a 7. I'm hungry. Martin says, TT said they should have had another penalty for handball. No, you shouldn't have. Nuances of Fate says Odegaard 9.5. He was the official man of the match, was clearly the best player on the pitch. I think it was really, I think it was pretty clear that he was our best player, but that's just me. Jordan says, but y'all said you wanted Real Madrid instead of City. Look what Bayern did to us. Tawana says, I love Odegaard so much. I want to cry, but we need to help him out. Let's see. You what says 8 Odie. Martinell says, what the hell was that with Gabrielle picking up the ball from Raya? I mean, everybody is saying it's Raya, but maybe there was a little bit of Gabrielle just needing to let Raya get it. I don't know what the communication was supposed to be. There was confusion back there. I'm just gonna say it was everybody made a mistake there. I really don't feel like it's that clear of an error where it was 100% on somebody. But yeah, Boy says, I'm bored of Odegaard's brilliance now. He's always doing some technical widgetry on the ball. Something has to change around him for things to work at all stadiums. Johnny D says, Odegaard 7 out of 10. Good defensively, tackled back and took back like 5 balls. Hands down, our best player, our best defender. Nothing offensively, still man of the match. I just feel like when you're asking somebody of his quality to do all things, which is it's expected because he's the captain, he's one of our best players, but even still, you don't see other teams like players having to do that much. And I feel like in games like this where our midfield is not functioning, he ends up having to do all 3 roles, and I just don't feel like that's the best use of him. That being said, you know, I don't know, like if we add Jesus back in, maybe we get because Jesus acts like another number 10, essentially. So maybe that's something we need to maybe go back to and look at again. Give Kai a rest. He's played a lot of football and he's playing well, but he was kind of like non-existent today. Maybe give him a rest, allow Jesus to come in, and we can get our double tens back. And maybe get Martinelli back involved because Martinelli is not in the game. I don't think it was Martinelli was terrible. I feel like Martinelli wasn't even in the game, and I just feel like that's not right, you know? That's not right. Like, he should be more in the game. He didn't even have an opportunity to get into it, which is unfortunate. So, Kai, again, another player that quite like Jorginho, I'm like, where were you at? You know, what was you doing? He had some good interventions when he went into midfield. I thought, he worked hard and stuff like that. But ultimately, like, it just wasn't a game for what he was there for, So he gets a 6. He just was just kind of there. Um, Martinelli is tough. He really like you think Kai wasn't involved. Martinelli definitely wasn't involved. I mean, he had like one shot and it was a decent shot, but that's it. I'm so apprehensive about giving Martinelli a bad score when we all know that, like, what was he meant to do? Did he ever get the ball in a good position? Not really, and Kivior really wasn't helping him out. There was nothing really going on that side. So I'm not quite sure, like, what kind of score to give him. I'm going to give him a 6 because I feel like a 5 would be incredibly harsh. But I think his issue was less so much about what he was doing, but more about, like, the left side just did not work. And, like, yeah, yeah. Um, and then that goes to Saka, who I also thought had a good game. I'm gonna watch the penalty back. I think it's a clear penalty, in my opinion. Like, I think it's a clear penalty. I think in any other place, any other time, any other team, they get that. Saka didn't get it. Um, Maybe he could have went around. He's going at full pace, so I think it's a little bit like, yeah, when you're sitting on the couch, you're like, he could have went around, but in real time, like, could he have gone around? Like, when he's going at full pace, I don't know. But he scored the opening goal, and that should have set us off in a really positive direction. Unfortunately, it didn't. Like, when you actually deep it the way that the game went, it couldn't have gone any better. We opened them up, and then we started creating more chances. We didn't get that second goal, and then we completely shot ourselves in the foot for no reason and gave them a foothold in the game. So, that being said, Saka did step up when we asked him to step up. He did. Um, and he had a difficult opponent against him in Alphonso Davies, and I think they both took turns getting at each other, and they both had decent games. I thought Saka had a good game. Ish, I think he should have had a penalty. Um, and maybe it's just because it was emotional and it's at the end of the game, but anybody would be thinking that was a penalty. Anybody. So I'm gonna give him a 7. Again, we didn't lose, so for me it's tough to, some players did have decent games, right? And so Gabriel Jesus, I thought, played like a player when he came on. Like, he was serious. Him and Trossard created the second goal. Maybe if they had started from the beginning, they would have scored, but it's all hindsight. We don't actually know how the game would have went. But would I consider starting Jesus against Bayern? Absolutely. I would. I think he's the one player, him and Zinchenko, that I'm genuinely like, yeah, they probably could have, Trossard too in a way, but I still feel like Martinelli didn't really have a chance. So, Jesus gets a 7. Thought he was good. I think Trossard also gets a 7. I think he did what Trossard does best, which is when he's in the box, he scores goals. And that's definitely what we needed at the time, So yeah. And Partey, you're so rusty. You're so rusty. But you haven't played all season, so what do you expect? I'm gonna give him a 6. I don't think he necessarily did anything bad, but didn't necessarily do anything good. I'm glad that he pulled Musalia down, or whoever that was, because we don't know what would have happened if he had not done that. So he took one for the team, and I thought that was smart. John Donut says Partey 7. Jagoon says Trossard 7, Partey 6, Jesus 7. Boy says ha 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 10 for Partey. Shamaria says Partey stunk up the place, in my opinion. It wasn't great. It really wasn't. I mean, he just gave the ball straight to a Bayern player. I'm trying to, like, again, I'm trying to be, like, as fair as I possibly can be, because when he came out there, I was like, fuck. He is so rusty, and I think the best outcome was that he didn't cost us a goal. So I'm gonna give him a 6. Yeah. Alex says, let's put that game behind quickly. We have Aston Villa in the weekend. I think we will. Like, listen, like, it's not the end of the world. I just think that, like, there was an unrealistic expectation from outsiders who were just putting pressure on us so that if this were to happen, that they could say that we failed, right? But there's an unrealistic expectation from the outside and the inside that this is gonna be somehow insanely easy because we're top of the Premier League and they're, like, not playing well, but they're still a good team, and so 2-2 is not a terrible result. We just have to show up in Munich, and so yeah, I don't really see where the panic is coming from. I just feel like people were like crazily, um, like underestimated the players that they have, right? Jacob says, I didn't think it'd be easy. Shamaria says, yep, it's time to move on. Win 7 out of 7 in the league and you win it. Johnny D says, outsiders be fed, couldn't care less. Lucas says, we are really lucky. Technically, it's a pen for Bayern, in my opinion. Gabriel grabs the ball when the ball is alive. Okay. No, I don't think I don't remember that. The Dude Diary says nothing went right for Partey. Couldn't even make basic passes, but trust in a few games he'll do bits in contributing our final games positively. Ricky App says Partey came on at the wrong time. Well, when do you guys expect him to come on? Like, there's no easy times or simple times for him to come on. When do you expect him to come on? Sam says, we were the better team. We just had the bad moments. I think it was pretty even. Blaze says some Arsenal fans don't have composure. Shamaria says rivals were convinced that we were going to smash Bayern, so now they're bantering us that we drew. I don't even think they were convinced that we were going to smash them. I think they put on this, so you have to beat them 3-0. It's going to be easy when, like, they wouldn't expect that from their own team. So yeah, it's nonsense. And if you're not beating Burnley and if you're not beating Brentford and you're not beating these teams, then I'm really not trying to hear you. I'll be so honest, like, I'm really not trying to hear you. So yeah. But and this whole, like, we bottled it, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know, you guys. Have some composure. Like, seriously, like, people say I'm super dramatic and stuff like that, but I'm seeing some of you guys and I'm just like, talk big during the week. And then when we draw and it's all to play for in Munich, you start going, we bottled it. It's over. Stand up. Stand up. Come on now. There's 264 of you guys still in here. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to get out of here. It's been a long ass day and there's still more football for me because US women come on and they're in a final. So I still have more to go, but it's not over. Stop acting like it is. Tomorrow, we'll definitely do something. And then Thursday, me and Deluded will be on. We'll preview Villa and also talk about this game. And yeah, we'll move forward. Yeah, so make sure you guys like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and we'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.